The American middle class. It's the lifeblood and the engine of the US economy. Throughout the past century, the United States has seen enormous prosperity due to the middle class's explosion as well as prosperity. But that has been shifting over the past decade. We're seeing a decline of the middle class all around us, and the signs are there. In this video, we plan on investigating this troubling trend, which has rapidly increased over the past decade. This is a very alarming situation all around. So let's dive into the metrics and data here. One thing that we're noticing is that there's a huge trend of businesses shifting away from targeting middle class consumers to targeting more higher middle class consumers. One company I'd like to point out is Disney. Data has showed that this past July 4th weekend was one of the slowest in nearly a decade for Disney. Park attendance was way low. So what could be behind this unexpected decline in attendance? And before we get started, be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It helps us out, helps grow the channel. Well, according to travel analysts and industry analysts, it all points to a growing sense of confusion as well as uncertainty among the American middle class. Disney's recent price hikes and changes to park operations have left many US families feeling disenchanted with the most magical place on earth. Disney executives have acknowledged the anticipated weaker earnings from their US parks this year. This is nothing new. We kind of knew this was going to happen. They went so far as to offer hotel discounts around Christmas, a time that usually is a peak period. In this report, it's noted that parks capacity has rapidly decreased. Now, it's important to note that the Disney executives have said such a decrease was intentional due to their decision to increase ticket prices. Disney wants to increase the spending per customer. So in simple terms, they want richer people to come through those Disney gates, since they believe they will increase revenue the most. We've also seen companies like Six Flags take this similar approach, go away from targeting more middle-class families to targeting higher middle-class families. Overall, they kind of want to improve the experience of the park by having shorter wait times. In essence, middle-class families aren't really spending that much at these theme parks. And unfortunately, I believe that this is a mega red flag to the state of the middle class in America. Keep in mind, these companies have all the data and knowledge in the world to see the storm brewing. These companies are telling us that the American middle class is rapidly running out of cash. It tells us that many American families are making the unfortunate decision not to go on vacation simply because they don't have the money. Spending power has rapidly taken a blow here, and the trend of companies using terms like premium product should be an alarm to anyone. Earlier this year, we even saw Chili's new CEO take a bold stand by saying that Chili's was offering their food too cheap, that customers weren't spending enough money. So what did the brilliant minds at Chili's management do? Well, they said Chili's was going to become more of a premium product. So as of today, Chili's is more expensive and offers less deals than it did pre-pandemic. This tells us that the traditional middle-class family, they just aren't eating out as much, and we have the data to back that up. The families that still go into restaurants, they're still spending a good bit of money, but overall, foot traffic is down, and these restaurants are anticipating that those higher middle-class families will kind of make up for these middle-class families not having the spending power that they once did. So overall, theme parks, they're down, and this could be a trend that theme parks are becoming a little less popular. But when it comes to a Disney park, I really think that just many families, they simply don't have the money to make the trip through airline or car trip all the way to Orlando to go to Disney World. That really isn't in the budget. Another interesting trend that we're seeing is that Walmart is starting to attract more and more higher middle class customers. Now, this tells us a lot. It tells us that the current state of the economy is shifting. The company's chief financial officer, John Rainey, he told CNBC that nearly 75% of Walmart's recent market share gains came from customers with an annual household income of $100,000 or more. Even America's top 20%, they're feeling the squeeze on inflation, which brings us to our next topic. Inflation. Now, inflation has gotten a bit better over the past few months. It's slowed down It's kind of simmered, but it's still lingering, and those effects, they haven't gone away. We all know how inflation works. It affects your average grocery bill. And according to online research by Go Banking, the past 12 months have seen Walmart grocery prices, on average, increase around 27.2%. That's insane. That means people, if they were spending around $100, they're now spending over like $130. It's a lot of money. Walmart's growth is coming from these top earning Americans. So middle class Americans simply can't afford as much groceries or items as they once did. And this is a trend that's been accelerating, and it's been accelerating very fast. And according to research done by Pew Research, 71% of Americans have said that their salaries, they're not keeping up with inflation. And when Walmart prices have almost risen 30% on groceries, who can blame them? Inflation has also been accompanied by huge rises in rental and housing prices. Mortgage rates have doubled since 2020. The US has a massive rental and housing crisis. More and more Americans are unable to afford rent. Home ownership has decreased heavily in the United States. Today we're seeing more and more Americans being priced out of buying a home, or being priced out of that apartment that they were looking for. We're seeing many Americans get behind on rent and mortgage. A matter of fact, mortgage rates have skyrocketed over 131% over the past 3 years alone. The shortage has caused lower supply, and we've seen higher demand. And boom, we got record housing prices. The price of materials and labor to construct a house has also reached record highs. Anything from paint to wood has just skyrocketed. That puts a huge damper on just everyday Americans wanting to buy a house. Now, many experts see the real estate bubble bursting later this year or onto 2024, but the damage has already been done because so many Americans have less savings today than they did 5 years ago. Simply put, many Americans have already burnt through their savings and any extra cash that they had. But now we're kind of reaching a breaking point. That cash has run out. So what can Americans do? For one, they can spend less, but we know that really can't happen if you're needing groceries and to pay rent. Well, we've seen some Americans spend way less money on airfare and hotels. Going back to that Disney theme park discussion, people are just traveling a bit less, at least middle class Americans are. It's evident that Americans don't have the same cash that they once did, and spending power is declining, and it's declining fast. If Americans don't have the cash, then how are they spending on everyday essentials? What are they using? Well, for one, they're using credit cards. Americans are now turning to credit cards in droves. More than 1/3 of Americans now carry credit card debt. And according to the Federal Reserve, Americans owe almost $1 trillion in credit card debt. That number likely is 1 trillion. That data was of last month. This is a 17% increase year over year. And with interest rates at record levels, many Americans are finding it difficult to pay off their credit card debt. According to the New York's Fed quarterly report on housing and debt and credit, total household debt has climbed to $17.05 trillion in the first quarter of 2023. This is about an increase of $2.9 trillion since Q4 of 2019, shortly before the pandemic hit. Now, this number can't be increasing this rapidly every year to this extent. This tells us that Americans are racking up huge debt. Auto loan debt has also skyrocketed. Today, there are around 16% of Americans spending over $1,000 per month on auto loans. Car prices have also surged during the pandemic due to supply chain challenges. This has led buyers to take out larger loans with higher interest rates. Despite a cooling off in car prices, there is now a concerning trend of auto loan defaults and car repossessions. Now, this has also led a lot of Americans to be late on payments. This is as bad as it was in the Great Recession. Now, all this is hurting the American middle class. The middle class is the economic engine, and if they aren't able to afford buying an engine of their own, then the country has a huge problem. I wanted to make this video to shine a light on this huge problem that Americans face. In my opinion, the decline of America's middle class is one of the most challenging and scary problems the United States faces. I want to display all these alarming stats to make the public aware that the middle class is getting squeezed and declining rapidly. With spending power going down and debt skyrocketing, many Americans' way of life will soon change if it hasn't already. Without a strong American middle class, achieving the American dream becomes a daunting task. We're now experiencing the consequences of excessive borrowing and money printing over the past 2 decades. It may take years for the American middle class to fully recover economically. Now that I've presented you the data and all the facts, what do you think is the leading cause to the decline of the American middle class? Well guys, I hope you liked this video and I hope you found it very informative. Be sure to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out and it helps grow the channel.